everyone to this evening's Moshiach lecture, Moshiach Mystery. The topic for this evening is, who is Moshiach? Bar Kochba, Martyr, Madman, or Moshiach? Okay, I'd like to give you a little bit of history, not too much history, but we're all familiar with the Temple era, the Second Temple, the Second Commonwealth, and the Jewish people had their Beis HaMikdash the second time after a 70-year period of Golus. And towards the end of the second Beis HaMikdash, the Jewish people were under Roman dominion, and it came to a point where push came to shove, and the Romans destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash in the year 70. We like using CE being the Common Era. That was in the year 70 CE. There was a revolt on behalf of the Jewish people that is commonly known among historians as the First Revolt. But the revolt actually didn't end with the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. There were still some people that were fighting very hard, a good number of Jews, but it all came to an end at the fortress of Masada, where it's a very big tourist site in Israel. But unfortunately, many Jews took their lives rather than falling to the hands of the Romans in the year 73 or 74 of the Common Era. So that was the first revolt. There was a second revolt that happened under the Roman Emperor Trajan, and that was around the year 99 CE. This revolt happened not in Israel only, but it happened in Egypt and other parts of the world where there are uprisings against the Romans. But that also ended up not so good for the Jewish people. There was a lot of martyrdom and sacrifice. And then his Trajan's nephew, Hadrian, became the next emperor. And Emperor Hadrian at first had a very open door policy, and he had a very nice policy toward the Jewish people. He was very tolerant of their customs and their festivals and their laws. But then there came one point where he even granted them permission to build a temple, to build the Beis HaMikdash again. But they wanted it in a precise location, and he wouldn't allow it. And then afterwards started a whole series of decrees against circumcision and Sabbath observance, etc. That ended up also badly. There was a revolt. Some people call it the second revolt, some people call it the third revolt. But the revolt fell when in the city of Beitar, and many of the Jewish people were murdered. And that was really the end of the dominion of the Jewish people in Israel by the fall of Beitar in approximately the year 132, 133, etc. I'm going to focus this evening on this third revolt over here that ended up with the massacre of the Jews in Beitar under the leadership of Bar Kochba. Okay, so let's examine for a moment a very famous passage in the Rambam. This would be in Hilchos Malachim U'Chamaseyim. This is chapter 11, halacha 3. The Rambam tells us as follows: Al Yala al Datcha. This is the Rambam is discussing the criteria for Mashiach and to know how who is Mashiach. So Rambam says, Al Yala al Datcha she'melech Mashiach tzarich lassos osav ma'asim, that one should not entertain the thought that Mashiach has to do wonders or miracles, or create anything new in the world, or have a resurrection of the dead, or such types of things that fools say, it's not so. Rabbi Kiva was a very wise scholar. He was from the scholars of the Mishnaic period. And he actually was the weapons bearer of Ben Kuziva, the person that we know, Bar Kochba. So he actually carried his weapons. And he said about him, Shehu Melech HaMashiach, that Bar Kochba is Mashiach. He proclaimed him to be Mashiach, and not only Rabbi Akiva, but V'divahu v'chol Chachmei Doiroi. All of the wise men of his generation, all the Chachamim, also conjectured Shehu Melech HaMashiach, that he is Mashiach, Ad Shenereg Ba'avonos, until he was killed through sins. Now, I want to underscore, it doesn't say Ba'avonosov, that he was killed through his sins. It says he was killed through sins. Kivan Shenereg, once he was killed, so it became known that he's not the one that everyone was anticipating to free them from their troubles. And the key, this is key, that Rabbi Akiva declared Bar Kochba as Mashiach, even though Bar Kochba, the Chachamim did not ask, oh, well, you say you're Mashiach, do a miracle, make the river flow backwards, or make this wall fall down. And so that is a proof that Mashiach does not have to do miracles. Now, at this point, we may wonder that if Bar Kochba was not asked to perform any miracles, then on what basis did Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim presume that he was Mashiach? And furthermore, what is the Rambam says that that Mashiach was Melech, that he was a king. Now, on what basis was Bar Kochba a king? But before we go to that, I just want to show you one more slide. If you noticed over here, it says that he and all the wise men of his generation, in other words, Rabbi Akiva and all the Chachamim of the generation felt that Bar Kochba was Mashiach. Here, in the Rambam says in Hilchos Tainus, he says that there was a great city called Beitar, and the Romans laid siege to that city, and there were tens of thousands of Jewish people. They had, doesn't say by name, but it says V'hoyla Melech Gadol. They had a great king, V'dimu Kol Yisroel, all the Jewish people. But here it only says Gedolei Chachamim, the great Chachamim, the greatest of the Chachamim felt that he is Mashiach. There were some dissenters. Don't get me wrong, the Gemora Yishalmi tells us about the Rabbi Yochanan ben Tarsa, who said, Bar Kochba, you're Mashiach, do a miracle. And he said to Rabbi Akiva, grass will grow in your cheeks, and and this will not be Mashiach. Mashiach will not have come. In other words, you'll probably pass away, and your body will turn into grass, and Mashiach will not have come. So there were those that objected, and there were even those that we'll talk about Bar Kochba's name a little bit later on in the presentation, his real name, based on evidence in the past century. But obviously, some called him Bar Kochba. Rabbi Akiva called him Bar Kochba, based on the verse in the Torah that says Dorach Kochba Miyakov, that a star will come out of Jacob, and so he's thought that he's the star, he's the person that's the guiding light, he's Mashiach, so that's why he gave him the pseudonym of Bar Kochba. Others, though, felt that he was a deceitful person, and he was just putting on a show, and he was just fooling everyone, and he was just a liar, and so they called him Ben Kuziva, which means a man of treachery, a man of deceit. Okay, be that as it may, but here we have another source about how so many people felt that he's Mashiach, and then he fell in the hands of the Romans, and they were all killed, and it was a very big catastrophe, as was the destruction of the temple, because that was actually the final blow to Israel at that time, and then from that point on, they were in exile. Okay, so at this point, if we're saying that Mashiach or Bar Kochba did not have to perform any wonders, so we have to ask the question, it also says that he was a king. So in what way was Bar Kochba a king? Doesn't the Rambam write in Hilchos Malachim that Ein ma'amidim melo v'tchila elo ki beis din shel shivim zakenim v'al pi navi? The Rambam tells us that ab initio, it's Latin meaning at the very outset, that we don't establish a king except if you have a beis din, if you have a Jewish high supreme court of 70 elders. So in other words, they have to establish the king. In order to establish monarchy, you need a beis din of 70 elders, V'al pi navi, and you also need a prophet like the prophet Shmuel, when he anointed King David. So in what way, in what sense is Bar Kochba king? Now, in the Bar Kochba period, you did have a legitimate court of rabbis, but there was no prophecy in those days. Prophecy had ended way earlier, in times of Chag, in the times of the beginning of the Second Temple. And also, so now we don't know, in what way is he a king, Bar Kochba? Also, if he's not going to do miracles, then what proof is there that he is Mashiach? On what basis will he identify himself as Mashiach? It's a question that, needs to be grappled with. So there's another Rambam. The Rambam says that Kivan Shenimshav David, that once King David was anointed, Zacha B'Keser Malchus, so he merited to have the crown of royalty. And once he got to be the king, then it is something that is he retains for himself, monarchy for himself, and for any male descendants forever, for all eternity. And then we have some proofs for this. So in other words, that in order to establish a king, that has to be in the beginning. When you're starting off with King David, then you need to have the 70 elders, and you have to have the prophet, the Navi. But once that is established, if there's no contention, there's no dispute about who the king is, as long as it's a descendant of King David, so that seems to be good enough. And you don't need afterwards a Navi. And it's actually based on this, that the Minchas Chinuch writes that Hamalchus Yerushalayim Meisha Paska Malchus, that monarchy is an inheritance. It goes from father to son to grandson, etc. Okay, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash, Kishe Yamos HaMelech, or Kohen Gadol. Let's say a king passes away, a Kohen Gadol, a Yachad Mashar HaMamonim, or any other people that have an appointed office. Ma'amidim Tachtav B'noi Oy Haroi Liyarshay. So then, in his stead, is his son, or anyone that's worthy to inherit. However, there's a stipulation. The caveat is, the son can only inherit if he is as wise as a father. In other words, he has the genes of his father in wisdom or in Yer Shamayim, in the fear of heaven. So those are prerequisites in order to be king. So in other words, in order to be the king, you have to be a descendant of King David, plus you have to have the same Yer Shamayim, you have to have the wisdom, basically, which is basically Torah mitzvahs. And that's why, that's obviously where the Rambam gets this, that how do we actually know who is going to be Mashiach? In Yamid Melech Mebeis David, that if a king arises, and it doesn't necessarily mean a king that in the beginning is a king. Obviously, if he's in the preliminary stages of Mashiach, then he's not a king yet. He's only a king when he becomes absolutely Mashiach. but it probably means in stature that he's someone who people are beginning to look up to as being hoige b'Torah v'isek b'mitzvahs k'David Aviv. He's someone that toils in Torah and constantly preoccupies himself with mitzvahs as his ancestor David, according to Torah Shabbat, Torah Shabbat Peh. Also, he will have a very big influence on others. He'll have Yaakov means to compel, but it could be compel intellectually, that he convinces other people about the beauty of Torah mitzvahs. He also strengthens the breaches in Torah. Chazek Bitka, if there's any breaches in the fulfillment of Torah, he makes sure to stay staunch and firm in the keeping of Torah mitzvahs. Yilachim Mochamas Hashem, fighting the wars of Hashem. Then all of this says that he is Becheskas Shehu Mashiach, that we can safely assume that he is Mashiach. The source of the fact that Mashiach needs to be learned in Torah and he has to toil in mitzvahs seems to be from this pasuk in Tehillim that says that Im Yishru Vanecha, if your children will keep brisi my covenant, Veidoisi Zo Alamdem, Gam B'neim Adayad, and it will be for the children for all eternity, then Yesh V'Luchiselach, then he'll be able to sit on the throne. So in other words, we see that in order to be a king, it's not that you have good foreign policy, it's not that you have you're wise economically, but it means that you are steeped in Torah mitzvahs and something that you convey to the next generation. And then the Rambam continues that if Mashiach is successful and he also dominates all the nations surrounding Israel, and he builds the Beis Hamikdash in its accurate location, he gathers the outcasts of the Jewish people, then definitely we could say that is Mashiach. So, the source for the Rambam, another source for the Rambam, is something that he had said earlier in Hilchos Melachim, that when we talk about a king, what is the goal of a king? The goal is that uvakol, in all matters, yiyu masav l'shem shemayim, everything he does should be for the sake of heaven, and that his sole concern is in order to raise the faith, the true faith, and to fill the world with righteousness, and to cast off the yoke of the evil empires, to fight the wars of Hashem. So, in conclusion, I think that we could say that in order to determine who is Mashiach, we don't need a Navi. As long as he's a descendant of King David, that would prove to be good enough. We don't need a Navi to establish the Mashiach. In other words, Hashem is giving us, the people, the ability to choose or to determine who is Mashiach based on the personality of Mashiach, the fact that he's learned, the fact that he has Yerushalayim, and the fact that he's a descendant of David HaMelech, and the fact that he seems to have leadership qualities. And that's how we determine who Mashiach is. But it's not so simple, because there seem to be many people that fit that bill. And so exactly what is it that Rebbe Akiva saw in Bar Kochba? In other words, did Bar Kochba, we all are familiar with the tales of Bar Kochba and the wars that he fought and everything, but did Bar Kochba really fit the bill in all those things that the Rambam is talking about? Was he, first of all, was he from royal stock? Was he a descendant of King David? And also the Rambam says in Pirush Mishnayos that he has to descend from King David and King Solomon, David and Shlomo. So was he even from Shevet Yehuda? What do we know? We don't seem to know much about Bar Kochba. And what about the other categories about, did he have an influence on other people? Did he spread education? Was he frum in his personal life, and the people that joined up with him to revolt, did he have an influence on them? So I'm going to, the purpose of the next two lectures is to show how in every single area Bar Kochba fit the bill. Every single thing that the Rambam says that Mashiach needs to have that quality, or he has to do that particular thing, I'm going to prove from a number of old sources and relatively new sources how Bar Kochba actually did that. So we're going to take it step by step. We're going to go baby steps. We'll do a little bit tonight and a little bit next week. But let's take it from the beginning. The first thing that the Rambam had said was in Yamid Melech, if a king will arise. So was Bar Kochba a king? So let's look what the Gemora tells us. The Gemora in Sanhedrin says, Bar Kuziva. Remember, we're using these two names interchangeably. We have Kuziva and we have Kochba. And they're both appellations of the person that we're talking about. So, Bar Kuziva, Molach, Tartin, Shninu, Palga. Bar Kochba ruled for 2.5 years. If you want to know the source, it's Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadid Gimel Amud Beis. Now, when were those 2.5 years? Because Bar Kochba had different places of residence. He was in Yerushalayim, he was in Beitar. I'm sure that he was running around between the troops and the different groups of people that were ambushing. There were caves, there were tunnels. So where was he the king 2.5 years? This is just a conjecture, but it's a good one. There's a sefer called Doros Rishonim, and the author it's a whole series on history, on Jewish history, and he tries to make sense of some of history that sometimes is a little bit in the cloud, in the mist of the history, but he tries to put things together and put the pieces of the puzzle together. Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi says as follows: Avokena Dover, the truth is that basically what he wants to bring out, his theory is that you can't say that Bar Kochba was a king in Beitar, because Beitar was a place that the Romans laid siege on, and this was the place where everyone escaped to. All the Jewish people, they were running from one location to another. They were on the run. In other words, at one point in time, they had the upper hand over the Romans. But then at the end, unfortunately, the Romans brought legions from Britain and from other places. And then it was, the Jewish people were they were going south, basically, and they had to flee to Beitar. So you can't say that he was the king then in Beitar, although there are sources that do. So his opinion is that Kein Adavar ki azman asher to'a boy Rebbe Kiva hu azman asher malam Yerushalayim, that the time that we're talking about, that Rebbe Kiva said, oh, he's Mashiach, that must be the time when he was in Yerushalayim. So these 2.5 years that the Gemara talks about that he was king, Malach, uses the term Malach, that was in Yerushalayim. Okay, then we go on. Okay. We have also the Gemara Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Zayin on the base. It says, Malchus Rishon, the first kingdom, Shivim Shona, 70 years, Malchus Shneer, Chabishim Shtayim, not to get into what those are references to, but Malchus Ben Kuziva, Shtei Shona Meksa, the kingdom Ben Kuziva, again, 2.5 years. Rambam, Hilchos Tainis, says what I told you before. I showed you this Rambam before, and it's in the Rambam had written that V'hoyla Melech Godo, they had a great king, and it's obviously a reference to Bar Kochba. Seder Adoros, Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, writes that Ben Kuziva, Hanikra Bar Kochba, is one and the same person. The Anshe Beitar, now his opinion is that it was the people of Beitar that Mashchu anointed him, V'kitru l'melech, and they coronated him. So that is his opinion. Actually, if you look at the Seder Adoros, there are at least 3 places that I know of in the Svarim that say that actually Bar Kochba was a dynasty, that it wasn't just one individual, but it was 3 generations of people. So he says this is in Sefer HaKabbalah, but let's look what the Meiri says in his introduction to Masechta Avos. He has a beautiful introduction where he goes through the history of Moshe Kibbutz Torah Sinai, who are the Anshe Knesset Geula, and he has biographies about all the different people that are mentioned in Pirkei Avos, and it goes by time period. And then when he gets to the time period of Rebbe Kiva, the Meiri writes as follows: the Chemedora ze Omad ben Kuziva. That he actually proclaimed himself as Mashiach, and even Rebbe Kiva bore his weapons. And Visholach Bar Kuziva zes Yadid ben Melech Roimi. Bar Kuziva revolted against the Roman king. And Shahaya Shmoi doesn't say what his name was. V'haragas Mishneu, and even killed his second in command. He ruled in Beitar the 52nd year after the destruction of the temple. So the destruction of the temple was in the year 70. So then this is 70, 80, 90, 120. So it was in the year 122. Vames, and he died a natural death. So Bar Kochba died a natural death. And his son ruled afterwards, and his grandson, until Hadrian, the Caesar Hadrian, came in the year 73 after the destruction, and which would be the year 133, and he killed the grandson of Bar Kochba. And then in this generation also, Hanina ben Tradian, and you have the Sora Ruge Malchus, they were also killed as well, Rebbe Kiva. Now, Seder Adairis even gives names to these descendants of Bar Kochba. He says that you had the third king, his name was Romulus. His father's name was Rufus, which means the ruddy one, the red-faced one, the son of Kuziva. So you have three generations: Romulus, the son of Rufus, son of Kuziva, and King Hadrian. He was the one that attacked Beitar and caused all that havoc. The kingdom of Bar Kuziva and his children, 21 years. Ben Kuziva himself ruled 2.5 years. Okay. Now, there's an interesting side note. The Gemora tells us, that in the laws of Meiser, giving Meiser, so you have what's called Meiser Rishon, that we give 1/10 of our crops to the Levi. And then we have what's called Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni is that in the first and second and fourth and fifth years of the Shemitah cycle, we're meant to give 1/10 of our crops and take them to Jerusalem and eat them over there in purity. But what happens if we don't want to schlep all of that to Jerusalem? So what we could do is we could redeem them for coins. We take the coins, the money, to Jerusalem, and over there we buy food and we eat that food. But there's a law about the type of coins that you're allowed to use. And the type of coins, they have to have an embedded picture. That's the rule. That's the halacha is that it has to have an embedded picture. Those are the type of coins that you have to use. Now, the Gemara Baba Kama tells us that what about Bar Kochba coins? Are you allowed to use those? So the Gemara says, Mois Kuzviyas, Yerushalmiyas. What about Kuzba coins that are from Yerushalayim? Can you use those coins to redeem Meiser Sheni? The Gemara says that no, you cannot. Rashi explains that Kuzviyas are the coins of Ben Kuziva, and they were from Yerushalayim. So that's Ben Kuziva coins, Bar Kochba coins. So the Gemara is talking about Bar Kochba coins. Now, I'm sure you all heard about the fact that there exist now Bar Kochba coins. I'm going to show you pictures of them, but not only that, I was at a gentleman's house this evening who was gracious enough to lend me some Bar Kochba coins. I have in my little bag over here silver and gold coins from, not only from Bar, I'll show it to you. Of course, I'll show it to you, but it's a coins from Bar Kochba. It's also, I have a coin from Vespasian, who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. I have a coin from Antiochus, and so he graciously lent me. And then I have my own personal coin, my own personal Bar Kochba coin. But if you look at the coins, you'll see that the things that are written on the coins really shows that Bar Kochba felt himself, and the people felt that he was actually a king. And what he actually did was he took the Roman coins from Trajan, from Hadrian, that we saw before their images, and he restruck those coins with his images and things like that. So let's take a look at some of them. This is my coin. This is an image of the coin that I have. Moshe, you see? Rabbi Moscowitz? We're talking about, I have with me Bar Kochba coins, silver, bronze. We'll be able to show, people are able to see them. This is a coin that I own. It's a small bronze Bar Kochba coin. Now, what's interesting is that on these coins, he used the Hebrew script that was used in the Second Temple era is the script that we use nowadays. But he had a very national loyalty, and he felt a lot of national pride, and he felt like using the script that was used in the First Temple period. So I'm going to soon show you this coin. This is a bronze coin. On this side, this says Shimon. Now, up until recent generations, we didn't know even his first name. It only says in the sources, Ben Kuziva, Bar Kochba, but recently, based on the last century, so we found out that his first name is Shimon through coins, through documents, which some of them I'm going to show you now. Okay, so it says on the obverse side of the coin Shimon, and on the reverse you have this is a bunch of grapes and a vine tendril, and it says L'cherus Yerushalayim, for the freedom of Yerushalayim. It's probably the third year. This was probably made in the third year of the revolt. This is Paleo Hebrew. So you have, here. So let's see in this page. You see this thing that looks like a W. So the thing that looks like a W is a shin. Okay, the thing that looks like this with three prongs on the top, that's the mem. That's the mem of Shimon. Okay, so here you have a chart. Here's another coin. This says Shimon Nasi Yisroel, the Prince of Yisroel, wrote on the coin. On the back we have that says year 2 of Shnas Beis L'Geulas Yisroel. That's what it says on the back of the coin. This says Shimon, and this is last week's parsha. 2 chatzotzros, 2 silver trumpets. This is a silver coin. Trumpets, chatzotzros. So he's using kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, something that is very, obviously he has his mind to build the Beis Hamikdash. We even know that that Hadrian built in the location of the Beis Hamikdash a temple to Jupiter, but his goal was to build the Beis Hamikdash. Here we have Elazar HaKohen, and on the back, year 1 of Geulas Yisroel. Here we have the Beis Hamikdash on one side of the coin, and a star. His name is Bar Kochba. You have over here a star, and everyone agrees. What?
How many points?
It seems to have 8 points, but it's a star nonetheless. Maybe not the Star of David,
No,
not the
not.
Maggid David, but
It's not. That came later.
or maybe it's something. I don't think it's like a Rosetta. The Rosetta is
Stone?
okay, a stone called the Rosetta.
Huh.
But and then over here, the numismatists, coin collectors, those that study the coinage, feel that this is the Aron, the Holy Ark, and that this is a facade of the Beis Hamikdash. Now on the back, this is a lulav in an esrog. Okay. This is very interesting. You have over here, this says Shimon. In the back, you have 1 arava. Now this arava, why 1 arava? Now not everyone says, granted not everyone believes that it's an arava. Some will say it's a pound. but there are those that have good reason to believe that it's an arava, it's a willow. And the reason is, if you look at the Gemora Sukkah, Shnai Sukkah, it says that how many, one lulav, one esrog, hadassim, right? 3 hadassim, 2 aravas. But the opinion of Rebbe Akiva is one of each. One lulav, one esrog, one hadas, and one arava. And he was very connected to Rebbe Akiva. I think maybe at this point I'll show you some of the coins. Now, what I want to do is I think because we have a small enough crowd, why don't you all come over here? I'll show you one coin at a time. It's a lot of money, but there are cases over here. These are from a person who is very generous to lend them to me for the shiur. His name is Rabbi Sidney Glenner. Okay, here we have the coin of, where do you want me to put it? You could show it to the camera. Vespasian. This is Aspianus, the person that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. Remember the story with Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, Imalka, and right? You know that whole story. So that's a golden coin, obviously, from Vespasian. Here is a coin, a Bar Kochba coin. You could see on one side there's a jug, and I want to say there's also this arava, and on the other side says his name, Shimon, in a wreath. This is amazing. This is the one that has the Beis Hamikdash, but it doesn't have the star on top. It has a wavy line, and on the back you have a lulav and an esrog. So this is a coin of Antiochus Epiphanes from the Hanukkah story.
It's not how he looks in Miracle.
And here's another Bar Kochba coin, Shimon on the front, and a lyre. You know what? A lyre is sort of like a harp.
Wow.
And here's my coin. This you could actually touch the coin. I don't care if you touch it, but it has a date palm on the front, and the name Shimon, and on the back it says for the freedom of Israel. And that you could actually hold. You could feel it. Others are in cases.
So this coin with the face?
I'm not sure.
But it's from the, oh, that's the one that you, wow.
So when the Gemora talks about Matbeis, Kuzbeis, so I believe this is what they were talking about.
Amazing.
Next week, we'll talk about how many of these coins were found in caves together with documents with the name of Bar Kochba in the documents. We'll show what time is it now? Can we go for another 5-10 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to take these back now.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yes. Okay. Let us continue. Oh, here we have Rebbe Akiva, Sukkah, Perek Gimel. Geshem shalulav echad ve'esrog echad, kach hadas echad va'arava achas. Now there are those that conjecture that it's not a willow, that it's a palm branch. Be that as it may, I mean, we see from here that, Bar Kochba definitely used images in the modern Israeli currency. We took these images in the modern, coinage of Israel based on that, nationalistic fervor and etc. Okay, something interesting is that in the 1950s, the early 1950s, around 1953, there were Bedouins that were coming up with different fragments and documents. We had in the 40s was the whole thing with the Dead Sea Scrolls and this wadi with this canyon that's also not far from, it's in that region. So Bedouins were scouring caves, and they were coming up with all sorts of interesting fragments and things like that. And one of the things that they sold to the Israeli Antiquity Department was a document. I don't have the picture of the document, but this is a contract written in Herodium in the year 2 of the revolt. Okay, so the document says the 20th of the month of Shvat. I'll soon show you what Herodium is. But the 20th of Shvat, year 2 of the redemption of Israel, it was given by Shimon. So we see his name, Shimon ben Kusiva. Now, the way it's spelled is Kof Samach Vez Aleph. We don't have the nekudot. We don't have the vowels. So we are pronouncing it for the meantime however we want to pronounce it. But it's Shimon ben Kusiva. So you could see, you could go either way. You could go Kusiva, you could go Kochba. But it seems his real name, and there are numerous documents that have that written that way. Shimon bar Kusiva, Shimon ben Kusiva. And he was the Nasi Yisroel at the encampment of Herodian. So you're asking what is signed by his order for Shimon ben Kusiva. This here you could see, this is not the same document, but this was found in a cave in that location I showed you before, Wadi Murabat. And you see over here, Mishimon ben Kavav Samach Beis, and I believe that's an Aleph. Shimon ben Kusiva. So here you have a letter found in a cave from Bar Kochba to Yeshua ben Geula. Now, what am I showing you next? The Rebbe, it's interesting, there's a lot of sikhs about Bar Kochba from the Rebbe, but there are 2 places where the Rebbe uses the name Shimon. Sigas Kodesh, Parshas Gedoshim, Toshin Yud Zayin. The far state in Gemora, therefore it says in Gemora that there was Shimon bar Kochba, that even the biggest Tanoim held that this is who he is, and this is the person that we're hoping for. So this is in 1957, and I think the first documents came to the surface in the early 1950s, 1953. So I guess the Rebbe was up on the fact that his real name was Shimon. Here you have another sikha, this is already 1969, but again he uses the words Shimon bar Kochba. Okay, you asked what is Herodium. So I took this picture when I was in Israel, and this is Herodium. Herodium is, that Herod built lots of things in his life. That he was the one that killed the Talmid Chachamim, and and his atonement was that he has to beautify the temple. But he was an incredible architect. You have the Herod stones that is by the Kosel, the ones that have the frame around them. You also find it by the Marsa Machpelah, and he has different things that he built throughout Israel. And one of them was a fortress, a stronghold. This is south of Yerushalayim. It's not far from the Yam HaMelech, from the Dead Sea. When we went on top, we were actually able to take a picture of the Yam HaMelech. So I took this picture, So you see these colonnades over here. And this was a fortress that Herod used. And inside there's many different chambers and rooms and mikvahs and baths and all sorts of incredible things inside of it. So it's a man-made mountain. It was made by him. It's not a natural thing because it just rises up, whatever. But what's interesting is that you have over here that Bar Kochba has a letter from Herodium, and there's actually a debate among scholars, but there are those who feel that one of the locations where Bar Kochba and his men hung out was this place. And actually, if he was king, and like we're saying that Bar Kochba was ruled and he was princely and stuff like that, so that would definitely be befitting for someone like Bar Kochba. And okay, now the next thing, so we've established that Bar Kochba definitely was royal, a king. He ruled for 2.5 years. What about being from the house of David, a descendant of David? So here we have in Seder Adairis, he writes that what is one of the reasons that Rebbe Akiva so much supported Bar Kochba was Ba'avur Shayim Mishevet Yehuda. He was from Shevet Yehuda, V'asam Ochamais, Ugvuru Matzliach, Hashem Shum Mashiach, because he did all these wars and everything, and he conducted these battles with success, and he was from Shevet Yehuda. That's why Rebbe Akiva supported him. We also have even further, I don't have I couldn't find it online, and I don't possess these svarim. Actually, I do, but I don't have time to make copies. But he actually writes that Anaf Yosef quotes the Tzror Hamor, who says that not only was he from Shevet Yehuda, but he was a descendant of David and Shlomo. He writes that Bar Kochba was a descendant of David and Shlomo. So also in the Sefer Nitzachim. Again, I didn't have time to call my brother who is Oitzer HaChochma, but maybe you could look it up if you want to do me a favor and see if you have that in Oitzer HaChochma. So that would be as far as being from David and Shlomo. That's the end of tonight's presentation. We continue next week with all the other, criteria of Bar Kochba and see if he fits the bill. So I thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you. Shakach.